Well, hello everybody. My name is Neil Andrew Prentice. I fancy myself as a few different things. I guess I call myself a life teacher. Um, and I speak to all things life oriented. You'll notice on my site, I've got a strong Zen influence. That's from many years of meditation. A lot of folks like myself sort of end up following the path we do because we hit some crazy bottom in life and you got to find your way out. It's kind of an old story. I don't mean to trivialize it, but I've heard this from so many people, a very, very common story. And it becomes a catalyst to figure out what it is that drives you as a person, what heals you, what destroys you. And I had a particular time in my life which was, was a life of zombie for better words, lack of better words. And to put it in context, it took me about 9 years to climb out of that phase of my life, and that was mostly through meditation. I had 3 years of my life where I was meditating 3 to 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, we say seems like things like it's not about being more or less special than anybody. That's not the point, or being more holier than thou, so to speak. It's just to put things in context because a lot of times, we hear people talk about life and we're just trying to get an understanding of, sort of what gives you the right to tell me how life works. Because it's an easy thing to read a book or take a seminar and just pontificate about how life works. And, oftentimes that's why we find ourselves listening to athletes or business people or people who've accomplished very difficult and challenging things because we give them a certain amount of respect. We know that, it's not easy to be an Olympic athlete or a world-class athlete or to build a giant business or whatever. And so credibility is a certain amount of thing. And, with people again like myself, it's always putting question like, who are you really? At the end of the day, people either resonate with us or they don't. I believe that there's a certain honesty and something we can feel about people. When people talk too loud, too much, when people smile too much, like they're trying to sell you something, that's the people I tend to put in question. When people make a mad chase to money, first thing they do is sign up for this and send me money. We all have that because we need to make a living. But when that becomes a primary thing, we have to question somebody's motivations. So a little bit about me. You'll notice on my site, I talk about everything because I think everything fits together. This is a very holistic view of life. It all is part of our story, our personalities, our pasts, our visions, money, sex, our health, the world, how we perceive the world, where we live. Every one of those is a piece of our puzzle that intertwines and has an effect on our lives. And to say that one of those things, well, there are some things that are more important, like our health. You can't argue that's the cornerstone. But they all they're part of our stories. And sometimes when we look at one little piece of that puzzle, it explains something. When we focus too much on one thing, we can lose another. If we focus too much on our body, we can forget the power of the mind. If we get too lost in our mind, we forget the power of just momentum and movement in our body and energy. We get too lost in the future. We don't see. I don't now sound like that person that always uses the old contradictions, but if we get too lost looking ahead, we forget the importance of where we come from. We get too lost in the past. We get sucked into black holes, and all of our energy disappears, and we have nothing to move forward with. There you go, in a nutshell. So I'm going to talk a lot more to the totality of life, also because this is a huge part of my teaching practice. We go through phases. And phases are different for everybody, and they have a different timing. There's times in our life where money should take a precedence. Learning how to deal with money should be a priority for us. That's not all the time. Sometimes it's emotions. We need to stop and prioritize how we deal with emotions. Sometimes it's our body. We need to stop and figure out how we're dealing with and feeding our body. Sometimes we do two or three at the same time, but more often there's one that jumps out. And also including that is our spirituality. And that doesn't mean we have to be religious. But I would argue even an atheist goes through a time, a deeply spiritual time, where they come out and say, you know what, I'm an atheist. But that comes through a time of questioning, a time where they prioritize how they choose to believe or not believe in things spiritual or metaphysical. So they're all pieces of our puzzle, and I'm going to talk to all of them because I want you to kind of be able to get a sense of where you are and what's important for you to check out at the moment. And to realize that, many of us rest a little more in certain places. That's why some people are more financially successful than others. They rest a little bit more in the money world. Some people rest more in the body world. They're just very healthy people. Maybe they're not uber successful, but that's where the core of their success is. Some people it's spiritual. And they're very, very aware and enlightened, have a great sense of presence in life, and maybe they don't have a lot. Well, that's their version of success. So I want to leave a landscape open for you rather than put you in a box as to what success is for you. I just want to give you a landscape of things to learn about in life and present them to you and let you sort of see what talks to you. And that's what all I'm going to do. So you're going to find a lot of, I've got a bunch of free talks that I'm going to post both on my site and YouTube. And those are just little 5 to 10 to 15 minute things. And I pride myself on getting maybe a little deeper on things than most people. A lot of life coaches, because I call myself a teacher, because I'm not always sometimes I'm a cheerleader, sometimes I'm not a cheerleader. And there's something about people who just sort of cheerlead and, yeah, you can do it. But they don't always give people the information they need. I have a saying, inspiration never trumps intelligence and wisdom. Inspiration is fuel, but without wisdom and intelligence and timing, inspiration will just fall flat and we'll be out of gas and we'll feel, like we didn't do the right thing. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and I'm going to try to give you as many of them as I can. My knowledge comes from just tons of 24 years of observation and journaling and meditation. Less, I'm not the guy that takes the weekend seminars. I I don't study under a lot of people. I just try to gather my own life experience. But none of our wisdom belongs to us. This I know. Anybody who's a good teacher knows that the grand pool of wisdom, everyone who's intelligent, who understands life, drinks from the same pool of water. It's all the same. We create different languages for stuff. There isn't a special wisdom over here and a more special. Now, there is what it is or it's not. So I just have my own little special way of presenting things and talking to things and slicing and dicing things. But I'm very aware it's all the same pool. Always has been and always will be. The chemistry of how people work has not changed. How our physics, our mind, our body, what gives us pleasure, what gives us pain, hasn't changed. It's just the stuff on the outside that changes. We have cars instead of horses. We look at TVs instead of wind blowing in the trees. We get paychecks instead of seashells, and maybe there's a few less people throwing spears and rocks at us than there used to be. But outside of that, it's kind of the same song and dance. We just have a little more luxury and buffer from stuff. So we're going to talk about all kinds of things. I'm going to try to nourish what everybody calls our higher mind. Huge part of being able to separate, for lack of the words, the stupid part of ourselves, which we all have, from our higher mind. Because we get a lot of different voices in our heads speaking at times, and sometimes we are like just trying to go, which is the one I should be listening to? And a lot of times that's just a process of nourishing our higher mind, so it becomes a stronger and stronger force. And that way, when it talks, it's a lot easier for us to connect and say, that's the voice I should be listening to. That's the dumbass part of myself, which, believe me, I have to listen to constantly as well, and say, yeah, no, I know your game. So let's try to bring some joy to our learning always. Life it's a double-edged sword. It is the yin and yang. And there's an aspect of our learning where we have to bring joy to. There's another aspect of our learning where we have to surrender, be humble to shadows, be able to surrender to collapsing into uncomfortable things. And that's the world where we learn to heal, overcome fears, deal with depression. It's, trust me, it's not all joyful. So we start off when we try to give ourselves joyful energy. That's our fuel. But then as we grow, there's always that component. The strongest and wisest of us is always still a very humble and fragile thing, at any time capable of being drawn down by the gravity of life into whatever. And, there's never a point in time where we need to own the strength and the skills to do our best to make it through those times. So hopefully, if you connect with my lessons and my teaching, we're going to go through both of those things. We're going to go through joyful things. We're going to go through things that are kind of, in the middle where we can zen out. And we're going to fall into places that are dark and shadowy just to test our ability to be humble and surrender and find the process that helps us learn how to deal with those sides of life. Good stuff all takes care of itself. It's the shadowy stuff we need to learn about and be brave and courageous and know that we're just connected to everybody in that level. We're all part of that human recipe and all part of that world of having to learn to deal with stuff. So I'm going to close this intro out. Thank you for listening. Neil Andrew Prentice, My Three Jewels. I wish to you, as I try to nurture myself as well, love, strength, wisdom. Those are the three big guides we're trying to nourish, whether it's one at a time, two at a time, or we get lucky, we get to do three. And hopefully we can make that work. So thank you so much. We'll chat with you soon.